Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses today.
Wait, listen.
Professor Sarin, you're a professor at Yale Law School?
I am.
Okay. And I see you've been pretty active on Twitter. I'm looking at one of your tweets from a few months ago, October 30th, 2023. I'd like to read it to you. The House Republican stance is, I kid you not, support for Israel as long as we make it easier for people to cheat on their taxes. End quote. Did you tweet that?
That's correct.
What's up, fellow patriots? Welcome back to Freedom Forge, the home of common sense, real talk, and unapologetic American values. If you love freedom, facts, and standing up to the swamp, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so big tech can't silence our voices. All right, let's dive into the latest bit of DC clown show, the so-called hearing, where Senator John Kennedy absolutely schools a Yale law professor who thinks Twitter activism is the same thing as real-world expertise. Folks, this is exactly what's wrong with elitist academia and the left-wing echo chamber.
Correct, yes.
Okay. How many Republican congressmen or women did you talk to before you made that statement?
I was reacting to the fact that, and we've talked about it actually.
Yes,
so
ma'am,
far
but
in this.
first, if you could, how many Republican congresswomen or congressmen did you talk to?
I didn't talk to them. I actually was just reacting to the legislation that was proposed.
You
and
didn't talk to
passed.
you didn't talk to any of them
No, sir.
before you said that every single one of them supports Israel only if it is made easier for people to cheat on their taxes?
I actually don't think that every single one of them believes
But
that.
that's what you
But I
said.
do think that the legislation passed by the House reflects a statement of purpose that in order to support Israel, it's
But I'm
important
looking at
to
what you said.
allow
what your
taxpayers to
students
be able
saw.
to cheat
You
on their
said
taxes.
that every single House Republican, none of whom you talked to, would only support Israel if it was made easier for Americans to cheat on their taxes. Now, you said that, and you didn't talk to any of them.
Senator Kennedy,
Didn't you?
I am struck by, and perhaps this is something on which we agree, that it is incredibly important to support Israel. It is also incredibly important to make sure that taxpayers at the top of the distribution
we agree on
pay their
Israel,
fair
but I
share.
just can't believe you would say this about members of Congress. It's pretty pejorative, vicious. Let me finish. Without talking to them. I mean, would it be possible for somebody to support a reduction to the IRS budget because they simply believe the federal government ought to have a balanced budget? Would that be a fair position?
That
Would that be a principled position?
Except that that actually doesn't work with respect to defunding
But would
the
it be a
IRS.
principled position?
It wouldn't be an accurate position because
Okay.
defunding
But you don't
the
know because you
IRS
didn't talk to anybody, did you?
Well,
you just said it.
Defunding the IRS, the CBO agrees, everyone who's testifying today agrees that that is going to add to deficits, not reduce them.
Could it be that a House Republican wanted to reduce the IRS's budget because they think that the IRS is a model of inefficiency and shouldn't be rewarded with more money?
Well,
Could that have been a possibility, a motivation for the way they
Senator
voted?
Kennedy, I so appreciate that question because the reality
Could that have been
that the
a
reason-
motivation for the way they voted?
and it relates very closely to what Senator
Could
Lee
that have
said.
been a motivation for the way they
reason
voted?
That you've seen an inefficient
Could that have
IRS.
been a motivation
If you
for
allow
the
the
way
witness
they
to
voted?
answer, you might get your answer, Senator
It
Kennedy.
frankly couldn't have been.
It
because
could or couldn't?
It could not have been.
How do you know you didn't talk to them?
Because the reason why you've seen
You
an
just
IRS
made this
that
statement that
hasn't been able.
every Republican in the House supports Israel only if it has been made easier for people to cheat on their taxes. Could it be that maybe a House member thought that, well, the more money we spend, the more deficits we have, and the more deficits we have, the more pressure is put on interest rates, and the higher interest rates go, the more it hurts the poor. Could that have been
Senator
the position of one of the House Republicans?
Senator Kennedy,
Could it have been theoretically?
couldn't have been because
Could it
everyone
couldn't have
agrees.
been?
It frankly couldn't.
How do you know? You didn't talk to him.
Well, I know that everyone agrees, including witnesses across the aisle, including CBO, including every single tax expert that has contemplated this question, that defunding the IRS makes deficits worse, not better. And so this is a deficit
I just find it,
measure.
Professor, appalling that you would make a statement like this, a vicious statement like this, without talking to a single person about whom you made the statement. And I'm going to remind you, you know, you can only be young once, but you can always be immature. And you ought to think about that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Let me just say that I think that the treatment of witnesses is beginning to degrade a bit here. And I'm going to strike some commentary if it continues down this road. I think personal insults to witnesses are not appropriate, and I will not be tolerant of that in this committee.
Well, could I respond, Mr. Chairman? You're going to
Fire away. I think you just called a
You're going
Yale
to do
Law
what
School
you got to
professor
do,
immature.
but I'm going to continue to use my time. You bring witnesses as you're entitled to, and some of them are very good. Some of them have the credibility of Michael Avenatti, and I'm going to use my time when I think it's appropriate to
And I'm
test.
going to use my authority as chairman
to test
as I think
credibility,
it is appropriate
witnesses'
as well,
credibility.
in
So
order
you
to
do
keep
what you
order
got to do, and I'm going to do what I got to do.
good behavior in
But
a
if that
Senate
is meant
committee.
to bully me, you're talking
No
to
attempt
the
to
wrong
bully
guy.
you. No attempt to bully you, none at all. It's to keep the witness and the committee free of bullying.
I'm entitled to test their credibility, and I think one of our witnesses just got tested.
So here's what happened. Professor Sarin, who teaches at Yale Law School, one of those Ivy League ivory towers, decided it was wise to tweet out that House Republicans only support Israel if they can make it easier for people to cheat on their taxes. You heard that right. She's accusing every Republican of wanting to help tax cheats, just because they want to rein in the out-of-control IRS. Unreal. Senator Kennedy, a real American and a straight shooter, calls her out. He asks her, point blank, "How many Republican congressmen or women did you talk to before you made that statement?" Guess what? She admits, on the record, she didn't talk to a single one. Not one. She just fired off a tweet smearing millions of voters and their representatives without a shred of evidence. That's the left for you. They don't need facts. They run on feelings and narratives. Kennedy calls her tweet vicious and appalling. And he's right. This is a Yale professor paid with our tax dollars, publicly trashing every Republican in the House, suggesting they're all crooks. No wonder Americans are sick and tired of the academic elite. Now, Professor Sarin tries to wiggle out of it. She says, "I was just reacting to the legislation." She claims defunding the IRS makes deficits worse, not better, and that every expert agrees. Well, excuse me, Professor, but Americans don't need another lecture from the people who think the IRS is some sacred cow. Let's talk about why Republicans want to cut the IRS budget. First, the IRS is notorious for waste, abuse, and intimidation. Remember Lois Lerner? Remember how conservative nonprofits were targeted and harassed? Second, more IRS funding means more agents and more audits on regular Americans, not just billionaires, but small business owners, working-class families, and anyone who dares to question the regime. Third, Republicans believe in limited government. That means cutting any bloated, unaccountable bureaucracy, especially one that's weaponized against the people. Senator Kennedy raises a very fair point. Maybe Republicans want to cut the IRS to balance the budget, reduce the deficit, or make the government more efficient. But Professor Sarin says it couldn't have been. How arrogant is that? How can you claim to know the motives of every single Republican without talking to a single one? Let's be real. If a conservative professor said all House Democrats want to make it easier for illegal immigrants to vote, the media would lose their minds. There'd be calls for resignation, apologies, maybe even hearings. But when a leftist professor smears Republicans, the establishment shrugs or cheers. Even when the committee chairman tries to rein in Senator Kennedy, calling his questioning degrading and bullying, Kennedy stands strong. He says it's his duty to test the credibility of witnesses, especially those making wild partisan claims. And he's right. Congress isn't a safe space. If you testify, you should be ready to defend your words. Here's what I think, folks. This hearing wasn't about tax policy or Israel. It's about the arrogance of the ruling class, the professors, the bureaucrats, the Twitter blue checks, who think they know what's best for you and don't care about facts or fairness. Senator Kennedy did what every patriot should do: challenge the lies, hold the elites accountable, and demand the truth. If more Republicans had his spine, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. And as for Professor Sarin, maybe next time, think twice before you slander millions of Americans from your Ivy League perch. Because out here in the real world, we know the truth. We want a secure border, a balanced budget, and a government that works for the people, not against them. If you agree, smash that like button, share this video with a friend, and leave a comment down below. What do you think about this hearing? Should professors be held accountable for their public statements? Should Congress keep funding the IRS, or should we cut it down to size? Thanks for watching, Patriots. Stay free, stand strong, and God bless America.